Well, good morning and happy Friday. It's August 18th, 2023. This is Up North News Radio. I'm Pat Kreitlow up here on Lake Wissota, getting set to talk to folks all across Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network. And coming up on this Friday, the Wisconsin Supreme Court is considering whether to fast track a lawsuit challenging the state's gerrymandered maps, and the court's right-wing justices, who haven't had any problem fast-tracking political cases in the past, have suddenly found reason to be against them this time and getting a quicker determination of whether Wisconsin voters deserve fair maps. We're going to talk to Keya Vakil, Courier Newsroom political correspondent, about how things are going to get noisy in the U.S. Capitol again over the next few weeks as another budget fight leads to another showdown and maybe another government shutdown. Donald Trump asks to push one of his trials to 2026, and then also promises a blockbuster report for next week that's going to blow the lid off the case against him. And then he says, never mind. So that and much more. Dan Schumacher, Mark Jacob, your weatherology forecast and more coming up. The radio show gets started at 6:06 after news and commercials. So we'll see you in about 4 minutes.
I hate that Taylor Swift song, by the way.
I don't know if I've ever heard it till yesterday. I probably have, but it clearly didn't resonate.
Do you want that Jimi Hendrix song?
Yeah, I just hadn't had time to look it up.
Okay, I will find it then.
Okay.
As goes Wisconsin with Kristen Bry.
And apparently, Maggie Dawn, big Newton lover of the Maggie Dawn Show.
I was so offended, Jane. You know how much I love and admire you. You're like my freaking radio hero. And then to hear you bash my Newton.
It's still bad.
You want the cakey part cakey. You want the jammy part jammy. That is like bringing me back.
As goes Wisconsin with host Kristen Bry. Weekdays 10 till noon on your local Civic Media radio station and on the Civic Media app. Direct from the Dairy State. It's Sharp Cheddar Weekends, a 3-hour block of Wisconsin-produced radio, Saturdays and Sundays from 11 a.m. till 2 p.m., featuring Raised in Wisco with Joel Clayfish and Danielle Fairman, The Cripes Cast with Charlie Behrens, and Under the Helmet with the Gravedigger, Gilbert Brown. You can enjoy it by the slice or enjoy the whole darn thing. Sharp Cheddar Weekends is radio so fresh, it squeaks. Listen in on the Civic Media station or on the app. Radio keeps your community informed, entertained, and connected. It's what we're all about at the Civic Media network of local radio stations.
We're having fun and moving fast to preserve hometown radio across Wisconsin. This includes a commitment to news. Now we want to invite you to join Civic Media's exclusive Facebook group, Wisconsin Breaking News. It's a place to share your community's news and chat with others from across the state about it.
Join the Facebook group Wisconsin Breaking News today. It's the perfect companion to your local Civic Media radio station.
Tired of hearing only one side of the story? Do you want news and information from people who, like you, know what it's like to work hard every day and still struggle to make ends meet? Then tune in to The Rick Smith Show every weeknight from 8 to 10 p.m. right here on the Civic Media Radio Network. Be part of the conversation. Tune in, turn on, and take back the American dream. The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
You are listening to your local Civic Media radio station on air. Thank you. Did you know we are always streaming on TuneIn and the Civic Media app?
All across Wisconsin from Civic Media, this is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Wissota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
If you are hearing Stevie Ray Vaughan's Crossfire at 6 o'clock in the morning, you're my kind of people. You either have a killer playlist for getting on the treadmill in the morning, or you're listening to Up North News Radio. Hey there, Wisconsin, good morning. You're here in the state of Common Sense on the shores of Lake Wissota, where it's another beautiful day up north and all across the Civic Media Radio Network on this Friday morning. It's August 18th. It's 53 degrees up here on the lake. Madison coming in at 51 this morning. Hayward, chilly at 42. Toma, 41. Green Bay is at 52 degrees this morning. We're going to unpack the news this morning, tell you about some quiet accomplishments and some loud dysfunction. It's going to get really noisy again in the U.S. Capitol over the next few weeks as the next budget fight leads to another showdown and maybe another government shutdown. Meanwhile, Americans are quietly getting relief in multiple ways through the Inflation Reduction Act, the bipartisan infrastructure law, so much more. Courier Newsroom national correspondent Keya Vakil has this week's Washington Roundup. We'll also talk about how Donald Trump has just asked to push one of his trials to 2026. He also the other day promised a blockbuster report that's just going to blow the doors off of, any kind of a criminal case against him. And now he says never mind. Also, the Wisconsin Supreme Court is considering whether to fast-track a lawsuit challenging the state's gerrymandered maps. And the court's right-wing justices, who in the past have had no issue fast-tracking other cases with political overtones, have suddenly found reason to be against a speedy determination of whether you and all Wisconsin voters deserve fair maps. We'll talk to Mark Jacob about national media coverage, highs and lows of the week. Dan Schumacher will talk about sports with us. And if you want to join in as well, our phone number is 844-967-2789. You can call or text that number. You can email us at radio@upnorthnewswi.com. You can comment on our Facebook page, and you can text us on the Civic Media app. In fact, again, our first choice always is that you are part of the action on your Civic Media radio station, wherever you are locally. But Aaron Zommers joining us out of Madison right now. I was texting with somebody about booking a potential guest, and they were asking, well, do you have a YouTube component? And I had to add it all up, and I wrote back, we are on one YouTube channel, 2 Twitter channels, 5 Facebook pages, along with 8 radio stations. And this person said, okay, and went ahead and booked a guest for us. So I guess we passed the audition.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, we are out there. We're everywhere. We're the bad penny. Can't get rid of us at 6 o'clock in the morning. You are doing a road trip this week.
A little bit. I don't know if necessarily I'd call it a road trip, but yeah, I'm heading up to Manitowoc because it is my youngest sister's 21st birthday tomorrow.
That's right. Okay. So like something like a family thing at home, or we're bar hopping, in downtown Manitowoc. Studio 8 isn't even there anymore, is it?
I don't believe so.
Our favorite like disco bar in Manitowoc. I think it's something else now. But what's the plan going to be here?
We're going to be staying home. She doesn't know if she'll be able to tolerate alcohol at all because she's never had it, and so we'll see. We'll see how that goes. She's also gluten-free, so I'm going to bring some gluten-free beer for her to try. And she said, "Sure, I'll try it as long as you have the option of drinking it if I don't like it." And I was like, "Sure, I can do that."
Okay, very nice. All right, well, hopefully that will go well for you as well. The daily newsletter that Up North News puts out comes out around 5 a.m. or so, and on Fridays it's always there's always a roundup section of stories you might have missed during the week as well. So there's ways that you can get Wisconsin State Fair food throughout the year. Wisconsin is getting a new area code for one part of the state, and what to expect during the first Republican presidential debate, which takes place next week in Milwaukee. And a story about how Governor Evers has budgeted for all Wisconsin students to have free meals at school, and yet it still hasn't happened yet. Listeners to this program can probably figure out why that hasn't happened yet, but others are learning about it from our newsletter. You can sign up for it over at our website, and that's upnorthnewswi.com. So there will be a lot of headlines to talk about today, and then we'll also get the weatherology forecast for this weekend. And it's going to be dry, and it's going to be hot. And I guess it's going to be hazy again. I guess we're still dealing with those wildfires up in Canada. You would have thought everything that could burn up there has burned by now, but obviously that's not the case. It's been a terrible summer there, and so we will be dealing with smoke that trickles down this way with the currents, especially given this high pressure system that right now is bringing us all this cool air from up north this morning. But then eventually we'll be on the backside, and as it starts to sweep up warm air from the south, there's going to be a lot of 90s, I think, to report throughout the early to middle part of next week. So we'll get all the details from meteorologist Jennifer Vuchitsky coming up from Weatherology in just a little bit. And then also, after this upcoming break, we will tell you about the Brewers wrapping up their 3-game trip to Los Angeles to play the Dodgers. The Dodgers have been hot. The Dodgers are still hot. And that's a darn shame because Corbin Burns pitched a heck of a game last night, I hear. We'll tell you the details on that and so much more coming up in just a bit. Wherever you're listening across Wisconsin on this beautiful Friday morning, when you're here, you're up north. We'll be right back.
Than ever. Scammers try to scare you and steal your information or money. Emails try to phish your login and password. Online pop-ups and messages try to trick you, telling you there's something wrong with your computer even when there's not. Madison Computer Works can protect you from these threats. Our computer care plans help stop the scammers and fix your computer problems. Call 608-231-8000 for the computer support you deserve. Madison Computer Works, computers that work for you.
Over the past 30 years, Chad's Design Build has grown and improved how we do things, but we've never lost sight of our commitment to be a great place to work, focused on quality renovations for outstanding clients. Paying a living wage and providing excellent benefits to promote work-life balance does in fact attract outstanding people, which helps to explain our stellar reputation. Thank you, Madison, for 30 amazing years, building a better world one remodeled home at a time. This is Chad.
So you said this weekend is one where you don't have to do anything, right?
The Todd Alba
That's
Show.
right.
I see the silhouette of Todd Alba, who still hasn't figured out that maybe a TV person could help, set this whole thing up.
For whatever reason, StreamYard's video is just deciding that the room is too bright.
When has Todd Alba been accused of being too bright? I mean, really there. I'm like, where's Aaron with the rim shot?
The Todd Alba Show. Weekday afternoons from 1 till 3 on your local Civic Media radio station and on the app. Saturdays and Sundays at 1, don't miss Under the Helmet with the Gravedigger, featuring legendary Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. Football, life, and fun.
Earl, you've been driving a Yugo. They just gave you a brand new Ferrari with turbo boost. So enjoy it, brother.
Under the Helmet with the Gravedigger, Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram.
like the wind through my tree.
We're going to do some Dirty Dancing tunes throughout the morning here on this Friday. Unfortunately, for melancholy reasons, as we mark the anniversary of the birth of Patrick Swayze, born on this day in 1952, which would have made him 71 years old today, but he passed away back in 2009. But we're going to remember happier times through the work of his dancing and acting prowess on Dirty Dancing through all those years. Well, normally the Brewers are out west, and the Brewers were playing the Dodgers again last night. Normally, I get the summary off the Associated Press. This time around, I'd rather give credit to Kurt Hogg from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, because he says it in a much better way. He just says, Corbin Burns, the Brewers starter, delivered a Cy Young level performance Thursday night at Dodger Stadium. Nobody else on the Milwaukee Brewers offered any assistance. The Brewers offense came up empty against the Los Angeles Dodgers starter Lance Lynn and the bullpen, particularly in key situations with men on base, as it had another rotten night. Burns went 7 scoreless innings against a lineup averaging nearly 7 runs in the month of August. Burns struck out 9 and allowed only 2 hits, and yet the Dodgers won 1-0 for their 11th win in a row, and sweeping the Brewers. An even better thing now that they swept the White Sox in Chicago for the 3 games before coming to L.A., and now they're already bound for Texas. They have a game tonight against the Texas Rangers to get that series started, and so far, even though there was that sweep, the Brewers are still your National League Central Division leaders, leading both the Chicago Cubs and the Cincinnati Reds by 2 games as we head into, we're not quite the closing weekends of the season, but we're starting to feel it. There is that little nip in the air, especially this morning. My special correspondent who drives to Rice Lake every day tells me the colors are starting to change on some of the trees up there. So we will be watching the standings a little more closely, and you can catch the Brewers Texas series throughout the weekend if you're in the Fox Valley on Oshkosh Air Support 98.3, 1100 AM. Or if you're more in the Richland Center area, tune in to WRCE News from the Center, 107.7 FM and 1450 AM. All right, let's unpack the news. Some headlines now. You can react to them, vent a little about them, share what else is on your mind. You can call or text us at 844-967-2789. You can email us, radio@upnorthnewswi.com. You can comment on our Facebook pages, and as I mentioned to Aaron a minute ago, we're on several of them, including Up North News and Civic Media and Bull Falls Radio and 93.5 The Tap here in Chippewa Falls. And you can use the Civic Media app to send us a text. Where to begin? Let's start with the Wisconsin Supreme Court, which has decided, of course, it has a progressive majority now, and has decided to at least listen to a request to directly take up the challenge to the state's gerrymandered maps. Now, again, the way the process normally works is usually it's heard in some county circuit court someplace, and then there's a court of appeals, and then there's the state Supreme Court. But there are times when a state Supreme Court or the U.S. Supreme Court can kind of reach down and pluck a case up and say, you know what, this is clearly an important case. Somebody's requested that we take it up right away, and we're going to do that. Or at least we're going to consider doing that. And that's what's happening with the Wisconsin Supreme Court. They've said they're going to consider taking this up directly. That, again, is not a rare thing and has definitely happened when the court was controlled for 15 years by conservative justices, sometimes for rather outrageously political reasons, where it was clearly transparent what they were doing. And yet, again, mocking Casablanca, they are shocked to find out that it could happen as well when progressives control the court. And in doing so, right-wing Justice Rebecca Bradley, again, I don't know the legal term, so I'm going to go with flipped out. Wrote a dissenting opinion that was all about politics. She could not have sounded more like another, right-wing radio station talking head. It was supposed to be just a dissenting opinion on whether to take up the case directly or not. And instead, Rebecca Bradley writes, despite receiving nearly $10 million from the Democrat Party of Wisconsin and declaring the maps rigged, Justice Janet Protasewicz has not recused herself from the case. These 4 justices will adopt new maps to shift power away from Republicans and bestow an electoral advantage for Democrat candidates, fulfilling one of Protasewicz's many promises to the principal funder of her campaign. Again, that's not normally how you word the documents that come along with a state Supreme Court dissent. But she goes out and names all 4 justices, says Ann Walsh Bradley, Rebecca Dallett, Jill Krakowski, and Janet Protasewicz will force all the parties in this case to expend considerable resources, including taxpayer money, to respond to a petition everyone knows will be granted. To show how unhinged this is, I turn to one of the other conservative justices on the state Supreme Court, Brian Hagedorn, who does not play along well with Rebecca Bradley and with Chief Justice Annette Ziegler, the 2 right-wing justices. Conservative Brian Hagedorn puts out a concurring opinion that simply says the following. Our standard approach when receiving a petition for original action is to allow the parties an opportunity to be heard. Doing so here should give us a fuller picture of the issues in this case, and from there we can determine how best to proceed. Again, a few years back, I would never have said I was going to be saying as many nice things as I have been about Brian Hagedorn, because there are many issues on which we disagree. But in terms of how a justice conducts themselves, that's how you do it. You say, look, they've asked us for original action, meaning take up the case directly. We will hear the evidence, we will hear the arguments rather, and then we will make a decision. Doesn't seem to be that hard, and yet for Rebecca Bradley, she goes on and on about the Democrat Party, which, again, all you can do is just kind of shake your head at it and say, that's what you've got. We're going to call it the Democrat Party. Stop. Former President Donald Trump has said that he's going to put out a blockbuster report that is going to tell everybody just how terrible the case is against him for trying to steal the 2020 election. And then he backtracked on it. He had earlier said that the report was going to come out next Monday and would be irrefutable about proving his claims of voter fraud during the 2020 election. And that's the key point here. He's not promising an irrefutable report that defends his actions. He's promising an irrefutable report to prove his claims about voter fraud in 2020. Well, wouldn't that be a relief? Finally, we would get this report that he and Pillow Guy and everybody else has been clamoring about. And of course, at the state level, all of the legislators who've talked about irregularities. Finally, we're going to see the voter fraud that led to them trying to stage a coup. And yet, Donald Trump has put out a new social media post on his tiny social media network that says, rather than releasing the report on the rigged and stolen Georgia 2020 election, my lawyers would prefer putting this irrefutable and overwhelming evidence of election fraud and irregularities in formal legal filings as we fight to dismiss this disgraceful indictment and publicity campaign by a DA, blah, 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 blah. So we're not going to do it now. So Trump is not going to put out the report. He's also not going to debate. Again, with him, things could always change on a moment's notice. But again, on his tiny social media network, he says about debating in Milwaukee next week, Many people are asking whether or not I will be doing the debates. All Americans have been clamoring for a president of extremely high intelligence. As everyone is aware, my poll numbers are extraordinary. In fact, I am leading the runner-up, whoever that may now be, by more than 50 points. Reagan never did that. Neither did others. People know my record, one of the best ever. So why would I debate? I'm your man. I can't say on the radio what other fellow Republicans had to say about that, other than, to play chicken sound effects. And I don't really have to do that for you. Unfortunately, for Ron DeSantis, the news isn't much better. There is a lot of paperwork now out on the interwebs about Ron DeSantis's debate prep, because hundreds and hundreds of pages of documents about it were discovered on the web, giving all kinds of advice to him about how he's got to sharply go after Vivek Ramaswamy and how he's got to defend Trump, and on it goes. And I won't bore you with the details. Instead, I'd rather pull back the curtain a bit and tell you behind the scenes how this works. You see, again, the rules of elections are ridiculous. There's so many holes, make the Swiss cheese analogy. And one of the things is that you can't have collaboration between a PAC, a political action committee, and a campaign. They cannot directly talk to one another. So what PACs and other special interest groups do, or what the campaigns do sometimes, is they put information out there for the public, kind of, wink, it's on some very obscure page of some obscure website. And then the other side can go, oh, look at this information that we found. We're going to use it. And I'm going to make a confession to you. It happens all the time. It happened in my congressional campaign, happened in my legislative campaign. That's how these things work. It's not illegal. It's an indictment of just how ridiculous the current system is. And so it's not the world's biggest surprise that somebody somewhere saw all this debate prep info and tipped off the media, and now everybody's having a field day with it. It's just to say we really deserve a better system in this country. But since we don't have that, we're going to get these little sideshows, and now we'll be watching next week to see if Ron DeSantis does, in fact, do the things that he says that, or his debate prep says that he should do along the way. All right, let's take a break here, and when we come back, Keya Vakil, Courier Newsroom's national correspondent, will talk to us. We talked to him from Los Angeles so that he could sleep in this morning. But when we spoke, we talked about more things out of Washington, including the potential for another government shutdown because of a dysfunctional Republican-run House of Representatives. We'll be back here up north.
Frequency modulation and streaming worldwide on the Civic Media app. This is Mad Radio 92.7 WMDX.
ABC News, I'm Tom Rivers. Maui's number of dead holding for now at 111 killed in the island's wildfires. The island's emergency services chief, Herman Ndea, has resigned effective immediately. He said he did not activate emergency tsunami sirens to warn about the wildfires because it would have sent residents looking for higher ground.
Excuse me. On Wednesday, Trigby recommended the Netflix Wham documentary. I watched it last night, and it was really good. So I recommend that as well. Oh, he's not at the computer.
Evidence in the criminal indictment case against him and 18 alleged co-conspirators in Georgia. Trump saying his lawyers preferred he put the planned speech aside in light of the allegations of 2020 election interference. And a drone attack hitting a building in Moscow, causing an explosion in the business district. Mayor says was intercepted by Russian forces. Ukraine has not claimed responsibility. This is ABC News.
Darcy Haber, I hear you have solar panels on your office building. Since when are real estate brokers so concerned about the environment?
Drew, you should know that at Solidarity Realty, we provide outstanding real estate service while adhering to our core progressive values. Environmental sustainability is a big part of that.
So you really walk your talk, huh?
Yeah, I even walk to work.
Come on, always?
Well, sometimes I bike, and if I have an appointment across town, I use my solar panels to charge my plug-in.
Solidarity Realty. They're real, they're solid, and they're honest. Check them out at solidarityrealty.com.
Do you love getting rewards when you shop? Then shop Knucklehead CBD and vapes with the Knuckleheads Club. Every $10 spent gets you closer to 25% off, no matter what you buy. Make sure you buy Knucklehead. Stop in Saturday and Sunday and get 15% off Wellness and Wellness Plus, including Delta.
So did we almost have a caller there, or was that just some wrong number or something?
I am not sure because at first I didn't see it because I was working on something. That's the one thing about having two monitors on the right side of the table and two on the left.
You got to keep your head on a swivel during a fight
Usually
like that.
I do, but every once in a while I let someone on hold for a bit too long, I guess.
Still provide you with financial consultation, accurate financial statements, 24-hour maintenance, and a customizable plan designed specifically.
On Wednesday, Trigby recommended the Wham documentary on Netflix, and I watched it last night. It's pretty good. I learned a lot that I did not know.
Huh. Okay.
And interestingly, the entire thing is narrated by George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley, just taken from interviews that they've done over the years.
Oh, wow.
So the only voices, well, besides a couple of random like clips from other interviews, all you really hear is them talking about the band.
Hmm.
Can you afford to go down the wrong path?
That's kind of cool.
Design Garden uses modern tools to build your website the right way. Find us online at design.garden. Again, that's design.garden.
It's summertime in Wisconsin, and whatever the weather, it will impact you and your plans.
Should I water the garden? Will our event be rained out? Count on your local Civic Media radio station for in-depth details and the most up-to-date forecast.
Temperatures are rising into the mid and upper 70s under sunny skies.
It's your weather and more for your part of Wisconsin.
On your local Civic Media radio station and streaming on the Civic Media app.
One call can do it all. Your business's message.
As we get going again here on Friday morning on Up North News Radio, Keya Vakil joins us, national political correspondent out there on the West Coast. And as always, we're appreciative of his time. Keya, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Pat. I am hanging in there.
I know it's been a long week and there's been a lot to read. The Georgia stuff, I mean, it came so fast. I have admitted before I was wrong. They started presenting to the grand jury Monday morning, I think it was. And I thought it might drag on. I thought they might not even get a majority vote for charges. And I mean, they got it all. They got it close to midnight, but they got it all that day. So we all had to digest everything. So now that we've had a few days to go through everything, it still seems to be as serious as when it was first read. And yet some Republicans still want to somehow be dismissive of it. I don't know. Do we think the American people are going to dismiss this, or is it something they're going to pay attention to as it moves along?
I think they are going to pay attention to it. I think, there are, let's say 35 to 40% of the electorate that will back Trump no matter what, that will view this as a witch hunt, will disregard it. But, there was literally new polling out this week from Quinnipiac that a majority of independents, support prosecuting Trump for charges around trying to overturn 2020. And that most people believe, he should be held accountable. And so I do think people will pay attention, especially because, there's arguments to be made that, the New York case is, not necessarily particularly strong, but these two cases about 2020 are exceptionally strong. I have read through the indictments. They lay out a pretty meticulous case against Donald Trump for trying to overturn 2020 and undermine democracy. Because it's not like he just tried it one way. He tried it a whole bunch of ways with a whole bunch of people. He took a whole, there's a whole lot of notes on these criminal conspiracies.
Are you taking notes on a criminal conspiracy? I mean, yeah, there's a lot of notes.
I'm glad you picked up what I was putting down there. That's exactly what I was referencing. And notably in Georgia, there are 18, I believe, other people indicted, and all indicted on RICO charges. Which what's important about that is it means that they very well, prosecutors there could try to persuade some of these people to flip against Trump in order to, and so there is a decent chance that will happen, or at least could happen, which that is different than in the federal case, which does not have other indictments against other individuals, at least not yet, other than obviously in the documents case, which is separate. But all of which to say, the Georgia case is strong. There is a lot there, and it will be interesting to see how it plays out.
I have to say again, for folks that might have missed it before, even I have never seen The Wire, but all you got to do is go Google up is you taking notes on a criminal conspiracy, and you're going to love the memes and the GIFs that come up. So do yourself a favor, even if you didn't watch that. All right, back to let's with Trump. We are wondering about showing up in a courtroom there at the police station to turn himself in, get a mugshot and everything. Meanwhile, there's still speculation that he will or won't come to Milwaukee for the presidential primary debate. But we know plenty of candidates will be in Milwaukee next Wednesday. So let's ask ourselves what kinds of questions all of the other candidates are going to get. I guess I will give Brett Baer of Fox, quote unquote, News. I'll give him enough credit that I think there are going to be a couple of challenging questions in there. But what's your take on whether this will turn out to be a valuable exercise?
I mean, I think a lot of it depends on if Trump is there or not. And also, I would bet any amount of money that one of the first 1 to 3 questions would be about Trump's indictments. And that's going to be revealing, because if already we've seen most of the candidates, from Tim Scotts to Vivek Ramaswamy to Ron DeSantis, talk about how, try to dismiss it and claim this is all a hatchet job and a political, witch hunt. But there's plenty of evidence that that's not the case, obviously. And so it will be interesting to see if they continue with that. It'll be interesting to see if Mike Pence and Chris Christie continue to, be the two voices of reason, which is astonishing to say out loud for me. Yep. But I don't think the debate really is going to make very much difference at all, frankly. If Trump is there, I think he'll, probably just do what he always does, which is run roughshod over people. If he's not there, most of the questions will probably still be about him. And there is no indication that anyone is building any real momentum to unseat him from being the king of that party. And I say king quite intentionally, because the way he commands the Republican Party in the House and in the Senate, and pretty much all over the country, to be loyal to him, basically by virtue of, by threat of political career death, is not democratic at all.
Well, I mean, come on. It's a party that in 2020 didn't even adopt a platform. Their platform is whatever Donald Trump says, wherever you go, I will follow. So no, King is not hyperbole by any stretch. But the other candidates, in the hopes of either becoming president or his running mate or something, trudged off to the Iowa State Fair. And our colleagues and friends at Iowa Starting Line did masterful work covering it all. As you were watching the candidates try to avoid gaffes, or like Ron DeSantis, try to avoid human contact, what were some of your takeaways from the poor folks of Iowa being subjected to that candidate field?
Yeah, I mean, based on what I saw and what our reporters who were on the ground there saw, it pretty much confirms that, Trump is the leader of this field. He showed up briefly, he, gave a half-hearted effort, and people still ate it up. And then you've had people like Tim Scott and, Pence and DeSantis, Ramaswamy all show up too, but, could not, grab even a remote amount of the attention that Trump did. So there's that. There's the fact that Mike Pence honestly continues to be asked about January 6th and continues to hold to his guns, which is pretty much the only positive thing I can say about Mike Pence since he became Trump's vice president, is that he will die on this hill, and I respect that. And otherwise, you're seeing DeSantis. He's trying to rebrand himself as a family man, playing bumper cars with his kids. But they blocked one of our reporters from attending one of his events, which, is not a great look for someone who claims to be, a warrior for freedom and free speech.
Right. So they will gather and they will talk about, I hope, maybe talk about their ideas, the actual policy, not culture war things, but, actual plans for the future. And they will go up against, President Biden and his plans, his ideas, his record. And he talked a lot about that record this week as the Inflation Reduction Act hit its first anniversary. So as you looked at that coverage this week from the president and others, we've said in the past that Americans, by and large, couldn't really tell you what all is in it, but they seem to like what's in there. And when somebody like President Biden talks about it, like he did in Milwaukee this week, they go, oh, that's in there. Yeah, I like that. That seems to be what I've got out of the coverage this week.
Yeah, I mean, every poll of every measure in the law is incredibly popular, shows it's incredibly popular. The problem is a lot of these measures are ones that don't take effect for a few years. The ones that are in effect, are occasionally difficult to convey in a sentence. But effectively, the ones that are already helping people are lowering premium costs for health insurance, are ensuring that seniors with diabetes, don't have to ration their insulin or go broke paying for it. It's making sure that, seniors can get the vaccines they need, and that over time, drug costs will no longer be the costs of many high-priced drugs will be reined in for those who get Medicare. So those are some of the healthcare, provisions. In Wisconsin, that means 43,000 people who could have lost their health insurance last year or this year kept it because they got the government extended subsidies under the Inflation Reduction Act. And what that means is it's lowering the cost of monthly health insurance premiums to the point where they are affordable for people. And that matters. It's health insurance premiums are one of the, after your rent or mortgage, and, it's got to be among the next one or two high costs that families face, and so that is a difference maker. It's not that, part of the reason I think the law has not resonated quite as much is because, over the year or two before, people were getting, $1,400 checks deposited into their account, and all these other provisions that were fantastic, but a little noisier, a little, sexier, for lack of a better term, and, subsidy for a health insurance premium, it doesn't roll off the top.
Right. Well, and it's always tough. I mean, good policy, does not always lend itself to great, packaging and marketing, but that's one of their challenges, and they're just going to have to try to live up to it, especially over the course of the next 14 months or so. But in the short term, we have a Congress that is decidedly divided, and yet is going to have to work out some kind of a deal here because, that whole debt ceiling matter, it never really went away. They basically put a pin back in the grenade and said, well, let's see how things look in October when we're writing next year's budget. Well, we're getting close to October, writing next year's budget, and are they going to actually need a stopgap spending bill before they get to that point? And isn't that just going to pull the pin right back out, and we're right back where we were a few months ago?
Yeah, I mean, I would not be shocked if they struggle to even get a stopgap bill, because right now what the dynamic is that the far right Republicans in the House pretty much won't agree to anything on budgets unless they're massive cuts from this current year, fiscal year. And that's obviously a non-starter for every Democrat. It's a non-starter for a lot of the moderate Republicans. And so there aren't, enough votes for Kevin McCarthy to pass very much of anything right now. And so I think ultimately the two options are, one, he makes huge concessions and tries to browbeat his moderates to pass a bill that will be used against them next year that, cuts funding for everything pretty much. Or he has to work with Democrats to pass a budget. And that might even be a stopgap initially. So, it'll be very interesting. We've been kind of building towards this all year as he tries to keep, the Freedom Caucus in check. And they have grown increasingly restless and see little reason to give him a win at this point. So I fully expect there to be a government shutdown. I think it could drag on anywhere from a couple days to several weeks, depending on, how difficult the right wants to make McCarthy's life. But I think ultimately what will happen is he'll make it go with Democrats because that's the only deal to be made.
It does, because otherwise, again, just as they're getting this debate started and people are getting set to vote in some of those early states, if they're seeing a government shutdown, there's not, I just don't see a lot of finger pointing going toward Joe Biden, but rather toward the people who want, cuts in Social Security and Medicare and things like that. So this is actually the quiet season if you think about what this fall could bring. But I laugh because summers used to be so quiet. But no, not now.
Yeah, I miss those days. Congress is technically, they are on recess right now, so it's quiet in Washington, but you have a former president getting indicted. You have,
the possibility of a shutdown not far away. Yeah, there's always something looming out there, but we're very thankful to have you to help straighten it all out and explain it all for us. Keya Vakil, thanks so much. Have a great weekend.
You too.
All right. I have to admit that I was a little confused before we do our next segment here, which is all about, this day in history and, a little music break. And the first thing you're going to hear in the next segment is Good Times. And I saw that at first and I thought, oh, from the TV show. No, not that one. The song from Chic is coming up. And as we noted as well, the anniversary of Patrick Swayze's birth. So we've got that coming up. In our next hour, we're going to be talking to Mark Jacob, a former editor at the Chicago Trib and the Chicago Sun-Times, about some of the national media coverage, especially of the latest Trump indictment, and whether there is an appropriate level of skepticism, shall we say, about some of Trump's defense, including his most recent request from his lawyers to put off one of his trials until 2026. Good luck with that one. All that and more after this. You're Up North.
Constitutional right to a slow trial.
Yeah, right.
2026. Wow.
Yeah, it's that version of Good Times. The unmistakable Nile Rodgers and Chic with the number one song from this day in 1979. All right, let's do some birthdays, not just the anniversary of Patrick Swayze's birth 71 years ago, but actor Robert Redford. Robert Redford turns 87 today, born this day in 1936. Actor Dennis Leary is 66. Two actors are 54 years old today. Both Ed Norton and Christian Slater were born on this day in 1969. And comedian Andy Samberg turns 45 years old today. Now, the next
there's
clip.
No way. I know he is 45, but
Yes.
Andy Samberg feels like somebody who is perpetually 35.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I did the same double take, and I also had to do the math. And it's like, okay, unless they're lying, it says here he was born in 1978. But yeah, he's somebody that he's kind of got that Dick Clark thing going where he's going to be forever youthful. Well, who am I kidding? Robert Redford turned 87 today. You'd look at him and you'll go, well, he's no longer, boyish, but he would pass for 67. Some people just have the genes. Next clip we're going to play is from Schoolhouse Rock. And so people, especially women of a certain age, are going to really like this one when I tell you that it was on this day in 1920 that the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was ratified, guaranteeing women the right to vote.
But we were suffering until suffering. Not a woman here could vote no matter what age. And the 19th Amendment struck down that restrictive rule.
I know some of you are singing that out loud. Former First Lady Rosalind Carter turns 96 years old today. Caitlin Olsen, the actress, is 48. That one shocks me almost as much as Andy Samberg, that Caitlin Olsen is 48 years old today. But how long has It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia been on, Aaron? It goes way back, right? It's got to be 10 plus years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always forget the real names of the actors besides Charlie Day, because that's also Charlie, and obviously Danny DeVito. But
yes,
yeah, she's D.
Yes.
For those who are not aware.
She's insanely good. All right, we've been talking about Woodstock the past couple of days because this is the anniversary of that music festival from 1969. Jimi Hendrix closed out Woodstock with a performance of Hey Joe on the early Monday morning of Woodstock. So as the festival headliner, he was supposed to close things out the previous night, but the entire show, the entire festival ended up running so long, he didn't take the stage until Monday morning. His set also included the now infamous and scorching rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner. And to which I would add, not to sound like a grouchy old man here, but, it ran into Monday morning. Well, it's not like all these people had jobs anyway, right, out in the crowd. No, it was a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and, of course, it went into overtime. It was historic. We normally talk about the top 40 or the Hot 100 charts, but let's give a listen to what the number one song was on the country chart this day in 1973 from Conway Twitty and Loretta Lynn.
Louisiana woman, Mississippi man, we get together every time we can. And Mississippi River can't keep us apart. There's too much love in this Mississippi heart. Too much love in this Louisiana heart.
That was just one of those songs when my mom was going through her country music phase in the mid-'70s, and KRSI was the big country station at the time in the Twin Cities. I think it was 980 AM. And I mean, you couldn't swing a dead fiddle without hitting Loretta Lynn or Conway Twitty on the radio. So now we'll come way ahead to 2017. So 6 years ago today, a big mystery from Taylor Swift. She wiped clean her Facebook account, her Twitter account, her Instagram account, and her personal YouTube. And then 3 days later, began posting video of a snake in order to tease her scathing song, Look What You Made Me Do.
Look what you made me do. Look what you made me do. Look what you just made me do. Look what you just made me do. I don't like your kingdom keys.
So there's the mystery behind her scrubbing her accounts. And Aaron, you asked if it was a familiar song to me, and I think just barely. Not being a Swiftie myself, a lot of respect for her, but I don't think I could have plucked this song out of a haystack.
Oh, this one I absolutely can, because I remember when it came out, my sisters were all listening to it, and I saw them sitting over at a computer with a YouTube video up and laughing, and I was like, what you watching there? And then they played this song, and I just sat there gobsmacked, and I was like, wow, the lyrical genius. Ooh, look what you made me do. Look what you made me do. Look what you just made me do. Look what you just made me do. You know, sorry, the old Taylor can't come to the phone right now. Why? Because she's dead.
Oh. You know, we can't all be Lennon and McCartney with every hit, and you know.
Yeah, most of her songs are amazing.
Most of her songs are. They are. So sometimes one's gonna, not strike the bullseye with everybody, especially I guess with the male demographic, shall we say. And I love a good revenge song or a good lashing out song. In fact, we should probably we could come up with a list of those. Some that are
definitely
especially good. Let's see, Britney Spears has Womanizer. What was Paula Abdul had Cold Hearted Snake. So there's a few. We should, if people want to send us in a list of some of their favorite, moments of really not liking men so much, we would take those songs. I'd make a playlist out of those.
Definitely. Oh, and by the way, I did look up the debut of Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It came out August 4th of, do you want to guess the year?
2010?
2005.
2005.
It is almost 20 years old.
That's incredible. And I'm not a regular watcher of it, but I mean, I can't help but admire every time I come across it. And again, I think Caitlin Olsen is just terrific in it, but they're all so good. And yeah, that show definitely had some staying power. All right, so there again, that's today's history lesson and music break for this Friday morning. It's August 18th. And I've got just enough time to get to one of the stories that we didn't get to earlier as we were unpacking the news. And that is noting that lawyers for former President Trump said yesterday it'll take them years to prepare to defend the former president against allegations that he, criminally conspired to rig an election. So they asked the judge yesterday to postpone the trial until April of 2026, claiming that they have to, read all of the documents because, there aren't keyword searches and computers that do all this work for lawyers' offices already. And granted, prosecutors always have, plenty of time to build their case, and then the defense has to look through the material. But April 2026 just sounds like your classic, Trump delay tactic. So I don't know that the trial is going to be held in 6 months the way the prosecutor wants, but 2026, that ain't happening either. Much more in our second hour of Up North News Radio. We'll be back.
Listen to hot gossip is easy. So here's some drama
that song
you can
I
share
like.
with your kid.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, did you hear about Cassie and Jake? No, but did you hear that vaping can cause
It's also
irreversible
in
lung
Just
damage
Dance,
and
that Wii
negative
game,
brain
and
development?
it's a fun one.
Nuh-uh.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You don't need to gossip if you want to have an open conversation about vaping. So if you want to get tips on when and how to talk to your kids, visit talkaboutvaping.org. Brought to you by the American Lung Association and the Ad Council.
Hi, we're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Mad Radio, WMDX 1580 AM Columbus, W224EG Madison, and always streaming on the Civic Media
ABC
app.
News, I'm Em Wynn. Hawaii's governor planning a statewide address tonight over the deadly wildfires on Maui that have killed 111 people so far. Meantime, the island's emergency services chief, Herman Ndaya, has resigned effective immediately over criticism he wasn't completely qualified for the job and did not activate tsunami sirens to warn residents about the flames.
To say that I'm not qualified, I think is incorrect.
He said this week he had no regrets about not sounding the sirens because he believes that would have sent people running to higher ground and towards the fires. Meantime, Canadian wildfires still burning and sparking the evacuation of the entire town of Yellowknife. 20,000 people live there with long lines at the airport for emergency flights out. And Hurricane Hillary has rapidly grown into a Category 4 storm off Mexico with 140-mile-an-hour winds. But forecasters say it's no longer expected to make landfall in Southern
One of my roommates is
California.
driving to work, and he just sent me a video on Snapchat. I guess he was listening because he said, "Look, Aaron, I agree with what you said about look what you made me do, but you're playing with fire there, buddy. The Swifties across Wisconsin are going to come and mob you."
He's not wrong.
Koberger's defense team is fighting the science that led to his arrest. Prosecutors say Koberger's DNA ties him to the house where the murders took place. They claim DNA from his cheek swab is a statistical match to DNA found on a knife sheath discovered near the body of victim Madison Mogan. But Koberger's defense attorneys are casting doubt, demanding the state disclose the materials used during its genetic genealogy investigation, and pointing out 3 other male DNA profiles were also found at the scene.
ABC's Morgan Norwood. New fees for electric vehicle owners in Texas. Starting next month, they'll have to pay an extra $200 a year to register their climate-friendly cars and trucks. And if you want to buy a new EV, you'll have to pay $400 up front. Emwin, ABC News.
Does your financial strategy include your hopes and dreams? What matters most to you? For over 100 years, Thriven has helped clients like you find financial solutions.
I also like how in the Wikipedia article for It's Always Sunny, they refer to Dee's character as a struggling actress who works as a waitress at Patty's, and I think it's hilarious to even refer to her as a struggling actress.
470-1303.
It's generous.
Matthew Roberts proudly serves the central Wisconsin area. For more details, visit thriven.com/disclosure.
If you think Madison couldn't be a hub for queer inclusive hockey, think again. The Madison Gay Hockey Association is the largest LGBTQ league in the world. We strive to offer hockey to people who've never had the chance to strap on skates before and welcome everyone regardless of gender, sexuality, or socioeconomic status. If you'd like to support our scholarship and gear assistance programs or view our game schedule, please visit our website at madisongayhockey.org. That's madisongayhockey.org.
Civic Media and Mad Radio 92.7 present the Max Inc. Matinee Concert Series. Sunday, August 20th at the High Noon Saloon, featuring the debut of Electromag, 7 Seasons Deep, and Iron Plow.
And I will get you might see in the chat where the podcast didn't publish right for the first hour. The website for editing the podcast is just being really slow. I will get that fixed once it decides to work.
For tickets, go to high-noon.com.
The Maggie Dawn Show.
Wisconsin's manner of funding local government is nearly singular in the country. That cheese stands alone, if you will. It hasn't been working in Milwaukee. It hasn't been working in Rhinelander. It hasn't been working in La Crosse, Green Bay, Madison, Kenosha, Racine. I don't care what you pick. It ain't working.
The Maggie Dawn Show, Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. on your local Civic Media radio station and on the Civic Media app. You know him as the nose tackle for the green and gold, 1993 to 1999, and again 2001 to 2003. 125 games, 292 tackles, 7 sacks, and a Super Bowl ring. But there's more to life than stats, and there's more to life than football. You're about to find out. Under the Helmet with the Gravedigger, featuring Packers legend Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. Saturday and Sunday at 1 on Civic Media and the Civic Media app.
My name is Teresa Barber. I was in the United States Navy, and I served overseas in the Middle East and Africa. Early on in my career, I had a commander that taught our suicide prevention training, and the very next day, he took his own life. 90% of suicide attempts involving a gun are fatal. My way of continuing my service is to help protect my community by being a responsible gun owner and by storing firearms safely. Store all your guns securely. Help stop suicide.
Brought to you by End Family Fire and the Ad Council.
For over a century, AM radio has evolved to meet the needs of our community. More than 80 million listeners depend on AM radio each month. It's also the backbone of the emergency alert system, keeping us safe in dangerous times. A new bill in Congress would ensure this free, reliable service remains in cars. Text AM to 52886 and tell Congress to support the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act.
Message and data rates may apply. You may receive up to 4 messages a month, and you may text STOP to stop.
This message furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters.
It's summertime in Wisconsin, and whatever the weather, it will impact you and your plans.
Should I water the garden? Will our event be ready?
All across Wisconsin from Civic Media, this is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Wissota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
So welcome back to the second hour of Up North News Radio for this Friday, August 18th. Usually I tell you it's National Fill-in-the-Blank Day, and sometimes there's one or two. There's way too many today, which really gets me wondering how these things get created. We'll get to it at some point, but today is National Fajita Day, National Ice Cream Pie Day, National Pinot Noir Day, National Mail Order Catalog Day, National Couples Day, National Hawaiian Shirt Day, National Kool-Aid Day, National Men's Grooming Day, and World Breast Cancer Research Day. Aaron, I think that the time has come for some winnowing. Is there not a single body that does these things? It used to be Congress would declare a holiday. Now, apparently they're like one of those claw machines that is broken and you get a prize every time.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure now anybody, I think Hallmark is responsible for some of these, and then other companies just started saying, you know what? Today is National Aaron Zommers Day because
There
I
you
said
go.
so.
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
they publish it somewhere, and it doesn't catch on, but it becomes official, so to speak.
Well, actually, now that you say that, I don't put them all up because there's just so many. But today, there's always one for like first names, and I was just looking to see if I could figure out what today's was. It's not Ian, I don't think. Jaden. It's National Jaden Day. Says who? But yeah, I could see a National Aaron Day. I'm sure there's a National Aaron Day in there. It's got to be the January 1st because of the A and the A. First on the calendar.
That would make sense.
First in your hearts.
You got to be ready. You got to be ready for November 28th because that is National Patrick Day.
Why not March 17th? We already have
I
a
know.
day for Patrick's.
I know. And Aaron Day is May 27th. Why?
Of course it is.
Although, if it's Aaron with one A instead of two, that's November 22nd.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe you actually found this list.
It just doesn't make any sense.
Look, since we're going down this rabbit hole, and this is off of the website nationaltoday.com, along with everything else that I've read to you, it is, it's Long Tan Day. It's National Bad Poetry Day. It's National Never Give Up Day and National Serendipity Day. Serendipity, for your dippity-do. So, look, I like passing on one or two of these at a time, but today the list was just like so redunculous that I thought I would share the whole thing and promise you that at some point we're going to find out, how do these websites decide, who they put on there and how these things happen. And maybe since clearly the bar is low, let's create our own.
Yeah, maybe we could do like National Up North Day or something like that.
Yes.
If that doesn't already exist.
Yeah, that probably does already exist, come to think about it. But yeah, we'll take a good look into that. So there you go. Started off our hour telling you what day it is. You know what day it is? It's Friday. It's all that matters. Coming up this hour, we'll talk to our usual Friday friends. We've got Mark Jacob coming up at the bottom of the hour, and we'll look at some of the media coverage of the goings-on with a former president of the United States being indicted for a fourth time, now facing 4 criminal trials. We'll also talk to our friend Dan Schumacher who's now with Northland College up in Ashland, and we'll talk a little sports, especially given just how badly the Brewers have played for the past 3 days in Los Angeles, and whether the Cubs and Reds are going to be able to catch up to them. We'll also talk a little bit about football. I was a little troubled last night to see that in one of the preseason games, the Philadelphia Eagles lost not one, but 2 players to neck injuries. And then on the other side of the football coin, high school football season is underway. Games got started this week, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk a little college football with Dan as well. If you can't hang around for that, or if you missed our last hour, just a reminder that you can catch the show anytime over at the Civic Media website, civicmedia.us, where there are many different ways to listen to the many different shows that we have. You listen to Up North News Radio regularly? That's great. Thank you. But maybe you'd like to hear a little bit of Todd Alba or Kristen Bry doing As Goes Wisconsin. You just want to sample the shows. You don't have to wait till 10 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock in the afternoon to do that. Go to civicmedia.us, and then you can click on shows and see everything across the network and give a listen to things that you'd like to try for the first time. And then you can subscribe to these shows as a podcast as well, right there on the website or through your favorite podcast distributor, whether it's Apple or Spotify or anything like that. And of course, for Up North News Radio, that also means you can go to the Up North News Facebook page or the Up North News YouTube page, and you can always look back at the video replay. And you can look at, the astonished faces of Aaron Zomers and myself as we read through all of these holidays and wondered how the heck you come up with all of them. One more date that is very real, and that's August 25th. That's a week from today. That is the end of the Summer Civic Pints statewide blood donation challenge. So you still have time to give blood, help out blood banks, help save a life, take a selfie when you do it, and then use the hashtag #CivicPints when you donate that pint of blood. And go to the Civic Media website and get information on how you could be eligible to win one of many, many prizes that are being given away by Civic Media as part of the Civic Media Civic Pints statewide blood donation challenge. Details on the Brewers-Dodgers game from last night and our weatherology forecast for the weekend coming up next, wherever you're listening across Wisconsin this morning. When you're here up north. We'll be right back.
During the buy one, get one lens offer at Ula Eyewear. Save up to 75% on your second set of lenses when you buy one now through August 31st. Have a favorite pair in need of new lenses?
On nationaldaycalendar.com, there's a form you can print out, or not print out, a form you can fill out to try and register a National Day.
Of course there is. All right, that makes sense.
Eyewear shopping destination. Exclusions apply.
Larry, it's your mom. Did you know the Civic Media Network covers the whole state of Wisconsin? They can help your business get the word out, whether you want to reach a smidge of folks or just want the whole kit and caboodle. Call 608-819-8255. Okay then, bye.
Weather in a Moment is brought to you by Chad's Design Build, building a better world one remodeled home at a time. Reach out today by going to chadsdesignbuild.com to learn more. Again, that's chadsdesignbuild.com.
If you care about animals or crops, you probably care how the weather could impact both.
It's summer in Wisconsin, and the success of your efforts often depends on knowing the forecast. Count on your local Civic Media weather team for all the information you need.
Crops' roots are also growing deeper in search for water, which is bad news because when rain finally falls, it will sit shallow and be absorbed in the top layers of the soil.
Your weather and more for your part of Wisconsin.
On your local Civic Media radio station and streaming on the
Although
app.
we cannot do a national day for a famous individual, that requires an act of Congress.
Okay, so you can have Jaden Day, but yeah.
You can't do Pat Kreitlow Day.
Find a forecast you can count on along with the in-depth details you need, only from the Civic Media weather team.
These extended conditions have led us into a flash drought, sitting in these above average temperatures with minimal rain.
Now I had the time of my life. No, I never felt like this before.
Little Bill Medley and Jennifer Warren on this Friday as we play Dirty Dancing music throughout the 2 hours here to mark the anniversary of the birth of Patrick Swayze. So now it's time to look ahead to the weekend and what promises to be just a really nice Wisconsin summer weekend by and large. Let's get all the details from Jennifer Vuchitsky from Weatherology, who joins us now. Jennifer, good morning to you.
Good morning.
So is it looking as good as I'm building it up here? Or I hope I'm not setting you up for disappointment or anything.
No, I mean, we're like you said, it's going to be a summer-like weekend. Some areas are going to be super, super hot, and overall, it is just going to be kind of a hot weekend. Today, we're looking at still an air quality alert in effect for the entire state today. Areas of haze lingering due to those Canadian wildfires, so something to keep in mind as you're heading out and about for the day today. Sunny across the board with highs in the mid-70s to right around about 80, so still slightly below or just barely around average for the day. Tomorrow, it does look like we'll see sunny skies continuing through the entire weekend for all listening areas. Hotter as well as a warm front comes in. Mid to upper 80s on Saturday from Wausau down to Madison, and for the eastern half of the state, 90 is expected from Wisconsin Rapids down to Richland Center, and for the western half of the state tomorrow. Then on Sunday, still that mix of highs through, though a little bit of a different orientation. Mixed mid to upper 80s expected for west central Wisconsin around Amory and Baldwin, so slightly cooler there on Sunday, but overall still a hot day. And that'll be also the case through Wausau into Oshkosh and over towards Milwaukee. Then 90s expected still from Waukesha westward, primarily for the southwestern portions of the state on Sunday. Then to start off the new work week on Monday, looks like some cloud cover coming in, lingering in the 80s for most, above average temperatures expected, into the 70s, a little bit cooler towards Lake Michigan, then starting to warm back up here by Tuesday.
Got to go find my SPF all over again. Jennifer, thank you so much. Hope you have a great weekend.
You too.
There's Jennifer Vuchitsky from Weatherology joining us on this Friday morning here on Up North News Radio. The LA Dodgers won their 11th game in a row, and that's because the last 3 of them have been against an anemic Milwaukee Brewers offense. The Dodgers won yesterday 1-0, sweeping the 3-game series and spoiling just a gem of a performance by Corbin Burnes, who went 7 scoreless innings against the Dodger lineup. He struck out 9. He allowed only 2 hits. But again, the Brewers couldn't score a single run, and they did have several opportunities to do so, but couldn't make it happen. So good thing they swept the White Sox for those 3 games coming into this. So at least they've broken even for the past week. But now they've got to get down to Texas to play a Rangers team. They're no slouches themselves, and so you can catch those games on the Civic Media Radio Network in 2 places, the Fox Valley on Oshkosh Air Support, 98.3, 1100 AM, and News from the Center and Richland Center, WRCE, 107.7 and 1450 AM. All right, let's unpack some more of the news here. The Republican presidential candidates will be in Milwaukee next week. And as we know, President Biden was in Milwaukee this week, again, in all cases showing that Wisconsin remains a battleground state. And remember what that means here, as I explained that there's not only going to be a debate next week, but also a big ad blitz by the Biden campaign. The story here from Lawrence Andrea in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel says the Biden campaign will be using the Republican primary debate as the launch pad for a paid media blitz, painting Republicans as extreme and tying all of the Republican hopefuls to Donald Trump. So starting with the Wednesday evening debate, the campaign will launch its 3rd major paid media buy of the election cycle, this one specifically targeting Black and Latino voters. So when you hear that Wisconsin is a battleground, it is understandable if some folks feel fatigue, that maybe we don't want so much attention. But I feel like I really have to add again, and I will again and again, add what this means for us. It means your vote matters. Your vote matters actually more than people who live in other states that are either so red or so blue that they know that their votes for president aren't going to be a difference maker. Yours could be. Wisconsin's presidential elections have been razor thin pretty much as long as I can remember. I think the last time anybody had what you would call a comfortable margin in Wisconsin was probably George W. Bush in 2004. But even back before that, Wisconsin's elections were, far from certain. They almost always went to the Democratic candidate, but they were always close. And then Donald Trump won Wisconsin in 2016. Again, close. Joe Biden won last time around, closely. So we know the importance here in Wisconsin. I feel like sometimes we need to bring it up to remind people that, that's the reason why we sometimes feel a little fatigued, why we get all this extra attention. But, in much the same way as in Iowa and New Hampshire, it means that, the votes in our state matter. And, as a result, we're going to get a little bit more attention. So I hope folks take it and use that value wisely and vote and talk to other people about the candidates that you're going to be supporting. There's a headline from up north that I wanted to pass along here, and that's how a federal judge this week dismissed a lawsuit that was seeking to block the Lac du Flambeau Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa, from barricading the roads on its reservation, saying that the non-tribal landowners who brought the lawsuit didn't have a case under federal law. If you haven't heard this story for a while, here's a refresher. The Lac du Flambeau Chippewa have been locked in a dispute with the adjoining town of Lac du Flambeau and 21 different non-tribal landowners since back in January, when tribal leaders first set up barricades on 4 reservation roadways that they said were now being illegally used because the agreement for using the roads by non-tribal members had actually expired more than some 10 years ago, and that negotiations were just not leading to anything. And so the tribe decided to, enforce the easement and put up the barriers. Some of the non-tribal members filed suit, but federal judge William Connolly in Madison, who had already signaled in June that he would not force the tribe to remove the barricades while the lawsuit played itself out, has now thrown the lawsuit out, saying that the tribal council does have sovereign rights over their roadways, and a federal court does not have the jurisdiction to force it to keep the roads open to the public. So what is it about the non-tribal folks and getting onto reservation land? Well, because of a federal policy from well over 100 years ago, the reservation's land was opened up to individual parcel sale. And it was ostensibly so that individual tribal members could own their own piece of land. But over time, that parcel of land got sold, maybe got sold again, to eventually to somebody who was not a tribal member. And so in order for that non-tribal member to get on land that they now own, but it's within the reservation, they have to travel on roads in the reservation, and tribal members have the right to say that they should be fairly compensated for providing that access, for using the land, using the roads, and so forth. That's called an easement. And easement payments had been going on for decades. But again, about a decade ago, those easements expired. And the two sides, along with some title companies and insurance companies and the Bureau of Indian Affairs, have not been able to come together on a proper agreement to again allow access onto reservation land. And so the tribe finally in January said that's enough. And, in order to basically get all sides to take things seriously, they put up the barricades. That obviously caused hardship for the non-tribal members, and that's why the lawsuit was filed. There was a separate lawsuit where the U.S. Department of Justice is actually suing the town of Lac du Flambeau in order to pay damages to the tribe for failing to renew the land agreements. And so the way that this is finally starting to resolve itself is that the tribal council adopted a resolution back in May that said, okay, we'll allow access, but let's start setting up payments at $22,000 for the month of June, and then increasing by $2,000 every month going forward. And so far, the town has said okay and have gone along with those payments. I don't know that that's necessarily, the long-range solution, but if both sides are still talking, and if there's this threat of a lawsuit no longer hanging over them, then perhaps this opens up the door for, a more longer-term resolution where maybe cooler heads are going to prevail. Governor Tony Evers is set to lead a trade mission to Europe in September. That announcement coming from his office on Thursday. The governor's office says the delegation will stress Wisconsin manufacturing, health, scientific, and food processing industries. The governor will be accompanied by a delegation from 10 companies in the state, along with Missy Hughes, who is the CEO of the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. There will be stops in Brussels, Belgium, Amsterdam, other cities in the Netherlands and in Luxembourg. Belgium was among the top 10 destinations for Wisconsin exports in 2021, and the Netherlands ranked 11th. Now, the announcement did not say the exact dates as far as when Evers is going to leave and return. A spokesperson didn't immediately respond to an email seeking the dates for the trip. But again, anything that builds on Wisconsin producers' ability to get their product into other markets should always be welcomed as a plus. I said in the last hour that there might be another budget showdown and another government shutdown coming up this fall. And I said at the time because of a dysfunctional U.S. House. And I could understand if people said, hey, wait a minute. Yeah, it takes two. The Democrats run the Senate, the Republicans run the House, and they can't agree. And that is a fair point. But when I say a dysfunctional U.S. House run by Republicans, I'm not kidding around. Here's the latest example coming from everybody's friend, George Santos, if that's his real name, the professional imposter. Well, now it turns out that a man who was a paid campaign fundraiser for Congressman Santos was indicted this week in New York on federal criminal charges related to his impersonating a top aide to House Speaker Kevin McCarthy as he solicited donations for Santos. He admits to faking his identity to a big donor, but stated that he was, high risk, high reward in everything I do. So get that. The guy, says, yep, I'm an imposter, but that's how I roll. I go big, go big or go home. Well, that's nice, sir, but you're still going to face federal charges for acting illegally, raising money for a professional liar who can't get kicked out of a Congress because the leadership only has a couple of votes to spare. So they've got to put up with this kind of shenanigans in our United States Congress. Time to look at how the national media has been covering some of the big stories of the past week. Our friend Mark Jacob is back after a several weeks hiatus here. It'll be nice to catch up, and we'll do that right after this break. You're up north.
Frequency modulation and streaming worldwide on the Civic Media app. This is Mad Radio.
Hello there.
Hi, Pat. How are you doing?
I'm good. You hear that Santos imposter story?
Oh yeah. The fact that he's still in Congress is a scandal, and he could be out in a day and a half if the Republicans wanted him out. They don't want him out.
They don't want him out. No,
it is mind-boggling.
Yep.
I mean. It should be embarrassing, but there's no more embarrassment. There's no shame left. It's all gone.
He should be in jail in Brazil.
Yeah, that too.
Really? Well, he cut a deal that he admitted the fraud in Brazil. I mean, it's part of the deal to get away from that thing, so he didn't get indicted, didn't get extradited. Mm-hmm. So I mean, come on. It's like the whole deal is that the whole theme of Republican Party now is crimes aren't crimes. There's no such thing as a crime. It's all weaponization. No crimes. Crime, no crime.
If our guy does it, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. The standards are just plummeting.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh, let's see. Well,
So what do you want to talk about, Pat?
Well, we'll start with just your overall feeling if the coverage of indictment number 4 has been fair.
Yeah. Okay, good.
While building community and promoting sustainability and diversity. Viva la resistance! Find them today at solidarityrealty.com.
I do like this Arkansas story, but
I love this Arkansas story. See, I used to live there.
Oh, okay.
And it's so I follow it quite closely, and it's really interesting, and it's so I mean I'd be happy to to explain that in 45 seconds if you want it.
Yep.
She brought in her education guy from Florida, from DeSantis's administration.
Of course.
God. She's trying to follow that model.
Yep.
Remember when the internet was new? Back then, you had to leave your house to start a business. Companies used to pay programmers bags of cash to get online. Now, small businesses can get online with a Facebook business page, or Squarespace, or Google My Business, or WordPress. But which tools should you use? Can you afford to go down the wrong path? Design Garden uses modern tools to build your...
As far as media coverage, the one thing that bothers me is how, and Jay Rosen has gotten into some of this, but is that they're acting like but Biden may face impeachment, but they're not, but they're acting like that's a normal thing, and they're not. They're just acting like it's, and they're just mentioning it in passing, and not even stopping and saying for what, and because the for what does not have a good answer.
Right. Yep.
Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
People won't give you the real talk on drugs, but it's time we know the facts. Fentanyl is killing people. It's a powerful opioid, often made illegally and commonly mixed with illicit drugs. It can even be pressed into counterfeit pills that resemble prescription medications. Just 2 milligrams, about the size of a few grains of sand, can potentially be lethal. This isn't an ad to scare you, but it is an ad to make you think twice. Get the facts. Go to...
Okay, here we go. All right, back on this Friday morning, Up North News Radio, and time to visit with our friend Mark Jacob, former editor at the Chicago Tribune, the Chicago Sun-Times, author as well, and talking about how the media has covered some of the big stories this week. And of course, the big one is a former president of the United States now facing a 4th indictment, the second one involving trying to steal an election. Mark, how are you?
I'm doing great. Great.
Right.
And it was kind of an interesting week for that. It didn't, the cycle wasn't great, with the indictment coming out, quite late at night. And that kind of damaged some of the coverage. Like the New York Times had their early editions said, details unclear on indictment. Well, the details were unclear because the indictment hadn't been released yet. But by the time anyone read your print paper and saw the headline that said details unclear, the details would be clear. So that was not a very good headline.
Well, no, and the headline itself, indictment is in over bid to flip vote in Georgia. There's something missing there.
Like a subject?
Like the words Donald Trump. I mean, and it is, people have pointed out that the story is basically a fraction of the breathless amount of space taken up for Hillary Clinton, years earlier.
They tried to make up for it the next day with a lot of coverage. And they've gone through the indictment. The thing about this is that you keep on getting the Republicans saying, there's nothing to this. This is weaponization. But, and I saw one guy, Ken Buck, representative from Colorado, saying, and the first question they asked him is, did you read the indictment? And he said, well, no. But, so it's one of those things where it's, please don't bother me with the facts. That we don't, any facts are scary. We don't want to know about them because it might make our opinion, less valid. So there's this really willful, on the right wing, media and politicians, there's a willful desire to not understand what's going on, even though it's really pretty clear. And we'll give the media credit for having explained the indictment and various aspects of it. The whole Coffee County thing in Georgia, where they brazenly went into a place where the machines were kept and copied off these and distributed it to other states. I mean, these are crimes, felonies, and it's about time people got indicted for it. I'm also very glad to see that it's not just Trump, that it's the whole cast of characters, or many of them: Mark Meadows, Rudy Giuliani. I mean, I don't understand how Rudy Giuliani got this far without getting indicted for something, but it's good to see that it happened.
Well, and it raises a couple of points here when people say, well, why was there a Georgia case? There's already a federal case. Isn't this being redundant? And there are, in fact, differences between the two, not the least of which is that in Georgia, they charged pretty much the whole cabal, while the federal case, there's a lot of unindicted co-conspirators like Kenneth Chesbro. We talked about him from Wisconsin. And perhaps the strategy is that if they're unindicted co-conspirators, meaning we haven't charged you yet, so if you cooperate with us, but in Georgia, they're like, no, we're not playing that game. You committed a crime, we think, and we're going to charge you.
Yeah, we've got all the facts here. Plus, you got these schemes in Georgia to try to undercut Fani Willis's power. So the Republicans are trying to go around the system and decide that prosecutors aren't allowed to be prosecutors. But the Jack Smith thing is built for speed. I mean, that's the reason that just Trump got indicted, is that Smith wants to get it done fast, and good for him, because we do have an election coming up, and one of the candidates is obviously a criminal, and frankly, he needs to get convicted of something before the election. I don't know if that'll happen, but because Pat, you look at Trump's whole history, and it's delay.
Oh yeah.
No, and if you're innocent, is your whole history delay? No. If you're guilty, your whole strategy is delay.
Right. And there's the parallel to Watergate as well, that, Nixon resigned, and then for literally a couple of years afterwards, we would see some of the underlings eventually go to trial or go to prison or whatnot. So yeah, totally understand why that's happening. But Mark, I don't know how any of this can be happening if we're not taking care of the higher priority that some would say is out there, and that would be, well, Hunter Biden.
Oh yeah.
Because again, we can't go 5 minutes without that, and even when, so why are we mentioning it? Well, call it out as a strategy that if you just say Hunter Biden, you've suddenly both sidesed this thing in people's minds when they should not. I've linked, again, we've said if Hunter Biden committed some kind of a crime, there should be consequences, but that is a speeding ticket compared to the vehicular manslaughter that we're seeing on the other side.
Right. And I'll give Democrats credit for this. They've pretty much said, well, if Hunter Biden committed crimes, he should be punished for them. It's not what you're getting on the right side, which is that well, no, Trump did nothing wrong, based on nothing. Now, it sure looks like Hunter Biden tried to leverage his dad's fame and influence to make money, because Hunter Biden was a disturbed guy who was addicted to drugs and just had problems. That's bad. That's sad, and it's not good when members of a politician's family try to leverage the influence. But nobody elected Hunter Biden. Nobody is going to elect Hunter Biden. So let's look at what Joe Biden did, and did he do anything wrong? And you keep on getting these flat out lies by people like Jim Comey on you get the whole and that idiot Jim Jordan from Ohio. You get those people who are just going to go into committee meetings, listen to what people say, and then go out of the committee meeting and say that they said the exact opposite. So there's a lot of lying going on regarding Joe Biden, and if they try to impeach Joe Biden, I think it'll blow up in their face, because they don't have the evidence, and evidence still does matter in some places in this country.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
But that's where the media's got to help too. They have to really be loyal to the facts, and they have to report stuff like that accurately. And unfortunately, they're not really doing it so much. They're kind of mentioning the possibility of Biden's impeachment, but they're not stopping to say, but there's no evidence to indicate that Joe Biden committed any kind of crime.
No,
But,
instead it's easier to go, well, is the Trump indictment, is this a terrible moment for our country? I'm
right,
like,
right,
no.
right.
I think you
No,
had a
that's
post that said, no, it's actually a good moment for the country if justice is being done.
yeah, totally. When somebody commits a crime and gets caught, them getting caught is not a sad day for the country. It's a good day. We want criminals prosecuted, don't we? At least we used to. I was brought up that way.
We were.
Pat, I got to tell you that it just feels like Alice in Wonderland or something in this country sometimes. And you get the Republicans so much saying, "Well, crimes aren't crimes. It's all just weaponization. There's no such thing as a crime. It's all just political. It's all political in nature. There's no such thing as a crime. And if we don't believe in crime, we don't believe in justice. We just, then we're just, anything goes.
Here's
and I
the
don't
other
want a society like that.
Here's the other Alice in Wonderland thing, but I guess I do mean it in a positive way, that people like Lynn Cheney, who I never would have agreed with on almost anything, has stepped up. Last hour, I talked about Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice Brian Hagedorn, as conservatives as they come, but he's not willing to rig the state Supreme Court, the way other conservative justices have in the past. And now you've got Trump's former Attorney General, William Barr, who was on Fox News or Fox Business yesterday, and I was looking at the clips this morning. And again, this is a guy who, he took the Mueller report and completely perverted its meaning. He did the country no favors.
Right.
And yet now he's out there on Fox of all places, and he's being absolutely merciless about, how Trump is most certainly guilty and should be convicted of these crimes. So
right.
the upside down nature also extends to some of the Republicans out there who are not willing to go along with this.
Yeah, I think Bill Barr is a terrible person. I think he was one of the worst attorney generals ever, and lied and all this. But he clearly saw that Trump was going in a completely felonious direction and decided to bug out so that he wouldn't get splashed by it. So that happened, and then now he's Fox. It's interesting that Fox News is having him on to say things like that. Fox News is clearly hedging its bets. They're afraid they're like the rest of the Republican Party. They're afraid to criticize Trump, but they know he's terrible and they know that he's, driving the Republican Party over the cliff, but they don't know what to do. They're like totally in a trick bag. And so it's interesting that they bring Barr out, and Barr just said, lawyers, including me, told him that he was going in a criminal direction, that there was no evidence that the election was stolen. In fact, it was a fair election, and that he needed to stop now, or he was going to be dealing with the Justice Department and with prosecutions for the rest of his life. And he didn't listen.
You and I will be talking much more a week from now about how how Fox News did covering the Milwaukee debate next week. Brett Baer, Martha McCallum will be the moderators. Any thoughts going into it as far as whether you think the moderators and Fox overall will cover the non-Trumpers in one way or another?
Well, I think that it would be good if they forced every candidate to talk about Trump, just because he's not going to be there almost certainly. But the fact that they won't criticize him shows how weak they are, because they're running against him and they won't criticize him. That just shows that they're cowards and they're not in favor of that. So I'd like to see some questioning along those lines. I'll be looking forward to seeing it too. But I think it's really interesting how DeSantis, they're now the big narrative is that he's, falling. And I think sometimes the media does that so they can write a later narrative that he's rising. He's the comeback kid.
Yes.
Just watch. I predict this, that at some point in time, DeSantis is going to be the comeback kid.
Oh, that's yes. You're absolutely right. Let's switch gears. You've spent time living where our next story takes us, and what Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee is doing to basically, erase part of the American story in getting rid of an AP African American Studies class. What's the background on that?
I live in the Chicago area, but I spent a lot of time in Arkansas when I was a kid, and I still pay attention to politics down there quite a bit. And Sarah Huckabee Sanders, obviously Trump's lying press secretary, is now governor, and they, at the very last minute, just the Friday before classes are going to get underway, school's going to get underway, they don't announce, they actually in quiet phone calls tell all these school districts that they're not going to accept the AP African American Studies course for course credit, or for the state pays like the tests, the $90 that it takes to take the test at the end of it. And that they decide that the state's not going to pay for that. They're going to pay for European history AP, but they're not going to pay for African American studies, which, is, what the heck are you doing? Why are you doing this? And they lied for days about why they were doing it. Oh, well, we're not clear. And then finally they came down to the real thing that they were saying, which is that we're not sure that this course does not violate the new law against CRT and indoctrination, critical race theory, which is so they say we cannot fund this class or accept it. And this guy in Arkansas, this journalist, he did a Freedom of Information Act request and asked, how do you define CRT in the law? And the state said, we have no documents that go to that. We have no definition of CRT. So now they're saying, well, we can't fund this class that about African American culture and history because it may violate the CRT, and we don't know what CRT is. So, where does that put anyone? But the really exciting thing about it is that the 6 school districts that were going to offer this AP class, all 6 of them said, we don't care if the state pays for it or not. We don't care if the state considers it, legitimate class. We're going to offer it. All 6 of them. So they're going against Sarah Huckabee Sanders in a very conservative state.
Sounds great. I've got 30 seconds left, so we'll have to probably do more on this next week because I got a feeling it's still going to be around. And that's Tommy Tuberville, the senator who's holding up hundreds now of military promotions. But just in these few seconds here, I'm glad to see somebody joining me and saying, I don't want to see Democratic senators tweeting about this. I want Democratic senators who are in the majority to change the rule or do something.
No, I think this rule where one senator can stop a bill is ridiculous. It's anti-democratic. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of Senate rules that are like the filibuster that are just plain terrible. And senators or Democrats, instead of enjoying the privilege of these stupid rules, should decide to attack them and take them down to promote democracy.
That's the way it should work. If you're in control and can reform, then you should reform. Mark Jacob, good to talk to you again. Have a great weekend.
All right, see you next week.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk to Dan Schumacher and do a little sports as we head into the weekend. That's right after this on this Friday morning, August 18th on Up North News Radio. We'll be back. How we doing?
Good.
Okay.
We got the Canadian smoke back.
Yeah. Yep. I haven't looked. Let me look out this window over here.
I actually had to put a blanket on last night.
Whoa.
I had the window open. It was like 51 degrees a little while ago.
Yes. Yeah, it's true. I can actually open up the window again. There we go. Yeah, I had to close the window for a while here. Okay.
It's like glass out there.
I know.
Is Sherry going Rice Lake?
Yep, she's up there now. Yep. Let's see. All right, 30 seconds, and we're back.
Something has moved.
play Name That Tune on a Friday morning with Dan Schumacher, our resident deadhead. What are we opening up today's segment with?
Roll away the Duke, Franklin's Tower.
Okay.
Called Franklin's Tower.
Aaron,
Sure
confirmation? Oh, okay, there we go. Now we're not putting anything past this guy. He had a Grateful Dead tribute band in his backyard just two weeks ago, so he probably knows a thing or two about the music that we're hearing here. A lot of football to talk about because again, it was a little cool out there. I mean, you said you needed a blanket last night.
Yeah, it was
there.
kind of nice. It was kind of nice, you know. It was 50 degrees and waking up to that, it was good. Throw a second blanket on top.
Yeah. So, you've got high school football getting going this week. We'll talk about college, talk about the pros. But I'm going to get the rough stuff out of the way first. And, for folks that don't like football, this is kind of going to set the pace for you here. But preseason football is risky enough as it is. And so to see not one but two Philadelphia Eagles players had to be carted off the field with neck injuries in a preseason game. I mean, it really just tells you something about the game itself. Football is not one that lends itself to exhibitions, like baseball, basketball, things like that, because of the very nature of how you make a play work in football.
Well, there's, this time of year, it's different than watching a Pro Bowl or anything like that, or OTAs. I mean, these guys are out there because they're trying to make a team. And they're playing at 110%, flying around the field. They're trying to get on film. They want to get graded out so they can have something to argue for that roster spot. So I understand the preseason. I think the preseason's too long, but it's unfortunate you get those injuries, and it happens every single year with preseason. Somebody gets hurt. It may be in practice. I mean, I would be more concerned if the Packers. They're going to play the Patriots tomorrow night, but they spent the week practicing against them. So, I don't know what's worse, the practice, them trying to earn spots during practice where you see the fights and you see the skirmishes amongst players and offensive line, defensive line, or is it a preseason game? I don't know what's worse on the body for them and how to make a team.
Yeah, but again, that's what comes with the territory here, and then that gets you into the season. And again, you've got the season starting this week. We've talked to Chad Holmes quite a bit earlier this week about how happy he is to see the players back on the field and to be calling games again. And I'm glad that there were games last night and I guess tonight, and a good thing because we're supposed to get into the 90s again for the early part of the week. So glad they've got good weather for it this week.
Yeah.
You looking forward to it?
No.
I'm talking about high school football, not the 90s.
Yeah, right. No, it's exciting. I was watching some of the highlights because they opened up Thursday night last night. So saw Chippewa Falls. Kid made a heck of a run. Look, they're trying to compare him. It was a Barry Sanders type run. I don't know what the outcome of the Chi-High game was, but high school football started, and it's basically when that starts, everything else is going. College football starts in 2 weeks as well, so it'll be in the grind. I did see the Badgers made a change at their color radio position. I think Mark Tauscher.
Yes.
Is going to be the new former Green Bay guy, lineman, and going to join the booth there for the Badgers this season. So football's all over the news right now.
I was going to say, and I don't have the Badger football schedule in front of me here, so we will. But again, we'll have all fall to talk about that. What with a new coach and everything else. So 'tis the season. We have to start making that turn. And I mentioned it earlier when talking about baseball because it's not quite home stretch time yet. But if you're the Brewers and you just got swept by the Dodgers, you're awfully happy that you swept the White Sox, the weekend prior because, you're running out of time to give up a sweep.
Correct. The Reds and the Cubs are both two games back right now in the division. They both have a big weekend here series, both the Brewers and the Cubs. And I'm sure I don't know who Cincinnati's playing, but a 2-game lead is not a lot. It can be overcome in a week, know. So I actually disagree with you, Pitt. I think this is playoff time basically. I would say it's the start of the home stretch. We're just a week away from being in September,
Yeah.
So I think it's going to get real interesting. We'll see how the pitching holds up for the next 30 to 45 days for all these teams to see where they land.
Yeah, I mean, the Brewers are heading to Texas, and they just got done with one division leader. The Dodgers lead the West by 10.5 games over the Giants, but the Rangers are no slouches. They lead the West by 2.5 games over Houston, and Texas on the whole, if they were in the same division as the Brewers, the Brewers would be about 5-6 games back. So This is not going to be an easy series for them either. They have several tough opponents compared to the Cubs and the Reds, respectively. So yeah, you're right that the Brewers should be putting more pressure on themselves, frankly.
Yeah, I think the Cubs and Brewers, don't they end the season in the last weekend, like late September?
Do they?
Down at Miller Park or whatever you want to call it, AmFam or whatever. They're probably not a stadium.
Well, yeah.
Leave.
Okay, here's how things end. So they're in Texas, and then next week they're at home for that little 2-game series against the Twins, that they do every year. But then it's 3 at home against the Padres. But then they go to Chicago, 3 against the Cubs at the end of this month. Then there's a Philly series. But then there's a series with Pittsburgh. They're in the division. Then the Yankees and Miami and Washington. But then here's the last however many games here. Let's see. The season ends with 4 games in St. Louis and 3 in Miami, and then 3 at home against St. Louis, and then 3 at home against the Cubs. So I guess we can talk about crunch time, but really that whole division, wherever things stand, going into those last 6 games of the season, the last week of September, that's going to say it all.
Yep. Looking at that division, I mean, the Cubs are the only team in the division right now out of the last 10 games have a winning record.
Mm-hmm.
So the Brewers, they're 4-6 in the last 10. So there's opportunity for Cincinnati, the Cubs, to make a run and make a move.
All right. Women's World Cup wraps up this weekend. Sweden versus Australia. Who you got? Trick question. You don't have to answer that. No.
Sweden.
Yeah. But again, it's one of those things where it starts at, I think, 3 or 4 a.m. On Fox for folks who are going to be night owls, and check it out. And then that'll be done. And then I see the U.S. women's coach has already resigned, which was fully expected.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Dan, I know you're just getting started with the new job, but, any opening you got to take seriously. So I think you're doing fine up there at Northland. So
we're getting people hired. We're getting people hired, and new head coaches, young people. It's a good opportunity at the university I'm at. So it's more of a beginner's stepping stone type school. So coaches,
you're definitely enjoying it. Thanks, Dan. Have a great weekend. Talk to you later.
See ya.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for being part of our show. Coming up on Monday, we'll have the ladies from Motherhood for Good, along with State Representative Christina Shelton. You can follow me over at Pat Kreitlow Up North on Facebook or Pat Kreitlow on Twitter. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here 6 a.m. Monday morning.